The thing is, the thing about perspective is that we need to know our bottom line. Usually, the big things that involve our morals, values, or safety are not things that we necessarily want to change perspective on, right? But most everything else, yeah, it's open game. Even stuff that we sometimes feel is a moral insult to us maybe turns out to not be so much, right? Or our values. I can think of when my children were young and they were going to a school where no TV was allowed and et cetera, et cetera. So we didn't have TV until after 9/11. And my kids were, oh my gosh, I think they were in elementary school still. And so, I had to change my perspective on other parents who were allowing their kids to watch TV. At first it was like, oh, terrible, terrible. But over time it was like, give everybody a break. Everybody does life differently, right? So that's a perspective change. And I think it was a really important one because it allowed me to be less judgmental and a lot more accepting of others at that point in my life. And so we also need to acknowledge when we're digging in our heels, right? So sometimes we dig in our heels for the sake of being right and not wanting to admit that there's another way to look at something. We see that happening a lot with politics. But we sometimes don't want to acknowledge that there's another way to look at something because we're digging in our heels because we want to win, right? Or for the sake of not losing face, the feeling of humiliation or our pride being lost or hurt can often cause people to dig their heels in. But to what end? Is it healthy for us in the long run? Is it healthy for others around us in the long run? Chances are, maybe not. So again, we need to think about what is our bottom line. Safety, definitely a bottom line. My values, definitely that's a bottom line. I have a value of acknowledging strangers. That to me is really important because I don't know what type of day somebody's had. So I need to be kind. That's a value to me. That even when somebody is unkind to me, that I like being kind back. That again is a value. So I stick to that bottom line. And that for me was a perspective change over, a number of years because, at one point in my life when I was young, I was a little bit feisty, not so much anymore. So perspective change and allowing ourselves to take a look at what's holding our feet to the ground sometimes is really important. So sometimes our perspective can overwhelm us. It can actually be the reason for us feeling overwhelmed. And some common thoughts that lead to feeling of overwhelm and feelings of stress are, I have too many tasks to complete. I've got too many people needing things from me. I am pulled in so many directions between work and home. There's not enough time of the day. What about me? Any others that you can think of? Just go ahead and unmute yourself and shout them out. Any other thoughts that could lead to overwhelm? All right, well, let's take a look at what can happen to us when we have perspective problem with everything, all our problems, all our concerns, all our tasks, worries, responsibilities, obligations go into one bucket. So I call this the everything bucket. So we've got bills, we've got kids, we've got work task, work project, we've got finances, budgeting, we've got planning a vacation, we've got dealing with in-laws or family members, dealing with friends, any problems, any task, having to take care of the house. It all goes into one bucket. And what do we feel when everything goes into one bucket?
Overwhelmed.
You bet. You bet. And what does overwhelm do to you? What does it make you feel like doing?
Well, for me personally, it gives me anxiety.
Yeah,
All of a sudden, I feel like I've lost control.
absolutely. Absolutely. And so some people, and Sophia, anything different for you?
Oh no, actually that's how I feel when I get overwhelmed too. I
Yeah,
just start
yeah.
worrying about how and the loss of control that's hard to handle.
Yeah. And sometimes it causes people to avoid, right? We can end up procrastinating or just avoiding things. And what does that cause? Bigger problems, right? Um, and avoidance is a technique that we can use sometimes for boundaries or putting things off until a more appropriate time. But when we use avoidance just because we're overwhelmed and we can't deal, then maybe we need to take a look at our perspective and how things are not working for us to put everything in that one bucket. Because what we tend to do with that one bucket is we pick it up and we dump it on our head, right? And that's that feeling of anxiety, overwhelm, feelings of needing to escape. So let's not put everything in the everything bucket. Instead, what I encourage people to do is to put problems, tasks, worries, et cetera, into their own buckets. So one way of changing perspective is to start to parse out the things that you need to attend to in your life. So at work, it might be project one and project two. But when we tend to think about projects at work, we think about projects plural. Oh my God, I've got so much to do, right? So what we want to do is parse them out. And all of this speaks to what you were talking about earlier about one step at a time, right? So we want to put them in their own bucket. So that way we can take a peek into that bucket and see what are the tasks that need to be accomplished within that bucket in order to be able to get rid of it, that it's done, right? Now, things like family, those buckets don't go away. There's always something going on, right? So what we want to do with the different buckets is we want to first label them. And then what we want to do is to peek inside and ask ourselves some questions. Oh, wait, we don't want to forget about, let's go back to our previous slide, just as an example, we have work, finances, project one, project two, tasks that need to be done, random tasks, things we need to take care of on a daily basis, and family. But what we always want to remember is to create that bucket for recharge. Because if we don't recharge, we can't do everything in our lives, right? And it's the flight attendant who always tells us, put on your own oxygen mask first. That's the idea of the recharge bucket. So inside that bucket, we want to have things like exercise. We want to have things like getting out into nature. There's a lot of research around how important it is to get out into nature to recharge. It's called forest bathing, I don't really feel like I bathe in the forest, but I do feel like I immerse myself in the moment. And that's the mindfulness that we can get into when we get out in nature. So I want to encourage you, wherever you live, if you're in the Bay Area, there's nature around somewhere. And I want to encourage you to take advantage of that. Also, getting together with friends is really important. Sleep is absolutely important for our recharge bucket. So sleep, if you are getting 6 or less hours of sleep, research shows you're just as well not getting any sleep. Well, that doesn't mean, oh, I'm only getting 6 hours, so yeah, I'm not going to bother to go to bed. What it means is, I didn't manage my time in the evening in a way that I'm going to get enough sleep. So if you can, snag even a 10-minute nap the next day. But the research shows that 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night is really what we need to recharge the physicality of our bodies and to recharge the emotional and mental health of our body. So also healthy eating, making sure that we're eating our meals, that if we're hungry, we're having a healthy snack. So the recharge bucket, don't underestimate it and always include it. So what we want to do with our buckets, and I did put a handout in the chat. Actually, Khadijah put that in the chat for me. And what I'll do is just go over it, and I'm going to encourage you to do this on your own time. And we can kind of do it together. We can like do an example. And then if you have questions, that way you have opportunity to ask some questions. So what we want to do with our buckets is we start out by labeling them. And then when we look inside our buckets, we want to think about what is most important. So if there's things that you've thrown into the worry bucket that you have no control over, maybe you need to take it out of the worry bucket and get rid of it. If you, I'm sorry, I have a fly flying around, so I'm swatting at this invisible thing on camera. So if you have something in the bucket that you have no control over, so let's say you have a friend or a relative who you can't control what comes out of their mouth, and maybe they come out with snarky comments once in a while. Well, you can't control that. So why have that in your worry bucket? What you do with that is you call EAP and you say, I've got this situation. Can we kind of walk through it so I can be prepared and learn how to set boundaries and take care of myself in this situation? You can't change others, but you can change how you respond to a situation. So what's most important in your bucket? What can be put aside from your bucket? What doesn't need to be handled right now, right? And it might be a whole bucket that you can say, you know what, this is not all that important. And when you look inside of your bucket, you want to think big label. So let's take finances. Okay, that's a big bucket right there by itself. Inside finances, you have budget, you might have bills, you might have savings for a vacation or a new car or college. So those are big labels. And then you take one of those things out of the bucket at a time and think about and work on, and with help if you need it, how do I want to approach this? So that way it's just not that yikes finance bucket. It's the vacation savings piece inside my finance bucket. How do I want to handle that? So remember, your recharge bucket is an everyday bucket. That is really important. Your recharge every single day, especially with your stressful jobs, is super important. So let's take a look at what our bucket exercise looks like. So I'm going to actually make my screen small, and I'm going to click on this instead. And so this is the bucket handout that you have in the chat. And so it's a PDF that's fillable, so you can type right into it. And what you want to do is label your buckets. The first one I would suggest labeling so you don't forget about it is your recharge bucket. And then you can label the rest as appropriate. You can create more buckets if you want to. You can print as many of these up as you want, or save them to your computer as many times as you want. And so you take a bucket. The point being that you take one at a time. So on the next page, notice we've just got one bucket here. So there's your label, and you can start writing what needs to be done to really empty out this bucket. And there's even an opportunity over here to put little X's so that you know when things are done. And I want to encourage you to do this exercise on your own, and we'll go over it together. So that way you can really start to utilize the concept of lessening your overwhelm. Okay. So any questions about this at this point? All right. So let's do an example together. So what do we want to name this bucket? Just for practice sake. Anybody?
Work.
Work. Okay. Big item there. So that's our work bucket. And so what's a big item, to parse it out into big pieces that we can write down here, what needs to be done?
Meetings.
Okay, so meeting. And are these standing meetings?
Some are, yeah. Some
Okay.
are. Yeah. Some are
So standing meetings. So what we want to do with that is to right away go and get them on our calendar, right?
Mhm.
So that can get checked off. So we've done that, we can check that off. Then we might want to have meeting prep, right?
Mhm.
So if these meetings are recurring, and what I suggest is having a format for standing meetings. And anybody who wants an example of a format, I'm glad to send that to you. Basically, the one we use includes calendar, support needed over the next week, projects not on the agenda, and then the standing items that we're giving updates for. So if anybody wants an example of that, I'm glad to send that. So you might have meeting prep. So what are you going to do? You need to put that on your calendar, right? Okay. So what other things are there for work?
Projects.
Okay. So let's have project A. And so under project A, we're going to list the tasks that we're going to need to get done under project A, right? And then we can mark those off as we go. And then we might want to have project B down here. And again, the tasks that are going to have to be accomplished to make project B happen. And we can again mark those off. Now, if we take a look at all of this together and we go, actually, I could knock out project B before project A because project A is more involved, then go ahead and switch it up. So basically what you want to do is you want to create timelines and you want to actually calendar things in so that way you can make sure you're accomplishing the tasks. Now, if we're going to go to a, like, let's just do our recharge bucket, because I'm all about recharge. What would we have in there?
Wellness massage.
Ooh, I like that. What else are we going to put in there?
Exercise, walking, maybe.
Okay. And how often are we going to walk?
4 times a week.
Okay. And how often are we going to get a wellness massage?
Once monthly at work.
Okay. So again, these are things that I want to encourage you to do because this is part of your well-being, that you actually calendar it in. And I know all too often it's easy to let life happen and not calendar in this recharge. Also, what we tend to not calendar in is fun. And fun is really, really important for our physical health, our mental health, emotional health, and well-being. So I want to encourage you to think of these things as a bucket. Because they are just as important as everything else in your life. Because if you don't take care of you, nobody else is going to, right? So I'm gonna go back to our slides here. And make that nice and big. So any questions about how to do the bucket exercise? Any comments about it? Do you think it's going to be hard, easy, a pain? What are your thoughts? There's no obligation for any particular answer. If you think it's going to be a pain, I want to know about that.
It seems relatively easy. It's actually a really great tool to actually see what you need to do. Kind of like what you have to do and what can be on the back burner. But also like see yourself checking things off. It's really a great exercise, I think. I don't know what other people think, but yeah.
Excellent. Well, I encourage all of you to give it a go. If you have any questions about it or get stuck or feel like it's too hard or something comes up and you go, I need help on this, feel free to reach out. That's what I'm here for. So basically, I'm going to encourage you to take one bucket at a time and to ask yourself some questions along the way. Okay. So what is in the bucket that is most important? What is in the bucket that can be delegated? So, aha, right? An aha moment is a delegation bucket. You could absolutely have a delegation bucket. So, Sophia, you were talking about PTA, and if you're anything like me, you would get yourself in over your head with PTA obligations, which I often did. And so, and I can get in over my head too at work because I'm a yes person. I just want to say yes to everything. And because it's fun. I like being really busy. I like a certain level of stress in my life. I know that about me. And I'm comfortable being out of my comfort zone. So if somebody's, offers up something new, I'm probably going to say yes. But there are times when I should delegate something, and it's okay to do that. So that's important to know about ourselves is, are we the person who takes on too much? And if so, we might need to think about a delegation bucket. So what is in the bucket that can be accomplished if I have a spare moment? So that's maybe the bucket for the little things, what can I get done in 10 minutes or less, or 15 minutes or less? And so that's a good bucket to have. What is going to take dedicated time? So what are the things that are more lengthy? And can I delegate an entire bucket? If you can, have at it. So those are just some tips about using the bucket exercise. And I don't know if there's any questions at this point. But let's take a look at a summary of what we went over thus far today. So one of the keys to managing overwhelm and stress is really about managing our perspective. So it's asking ourselves, do we have control over this or not? And what do we have the most control over? Anybody?
I would say having a different perspective on our thoughts about things.
Okay.
So
yeah, and that speaks to us. What we have most control over is ourselves. It really is ourselves, because we can't, when I'm on the freeway, I can't control other drivers, but I can control me. So if somebody cuts in front of me, I can either rant and rave, that person's long gone and I've worked up my heart rate, or I can do what I do, which is to say, have at it, buddy, if you want to get in front of me, if that one car is that important. And then I let go of it. I'm done. So it really is that we have very little control over a lot. And so we have to really focus on what we do have control of. And number one is us, is ourselves. So another thing that we want to be sure to do is to separate out our problems, our tasks, our worries, obligations, and responsibilities, because that alone can help us feel more in control. It's when we feel that sense of overwhelm that we feel out of control. We start to get anxious, and that can cause us to feel incapacitated and disempowered. So what we want to do is empower ourselves by separating out the things in our lives that we need to take care of. And I want you to remember to include your own need to recharge in taking a look at what buckets are in your life. So with that, we're almost at the top of the hour. We have about 6 minutes, and I'm going to go over some resources. But today I want to thank you for your participation. And I want to provide for you my the EAP number, which is up there, the main number that will roll over to our external EAP vendor if I'm otherwise occupied. There's tons of information on our website about your mental health benefits, substance abuse benefits, about your health benefits, about EAP services, and what we offer. Please reach out to me directly with any questions that you have. And I've put my email, my desk phone, and my work cell phone there. Don't hesitate to call me on my work cell phone. It's a great way to reach me. And so don't ever hesitate to use that number. In terms of resources, what I want to encourage you to add to your recharge bucket is a few things. One is a daily meditation of some sort, a daily deep breathing exercise of some sort. And the reason why I want to recommend this to you for daily is that when you get in those situations where you feel overwhelmed, the more you practice relaxation on your own, when you don't need it, the easier it is to call it up when you do need it. So, and two of you demonstrated that beautifully in your examples earlier today when you talked about getting a hold of yourself first when you realized that you were starting to feel overwhelmed. So that's what we want to do. A really good website for that is Insight Timer. And maybe, Khadijah, if you could just put that in the chat. It's Insight, INSIGHT, timer, all one word.com. You can download that to your phone. There's a lot of different meditations on there. There's relaxation music. You can say, I want something for 10 minutes on, for your break. By the way, take your breaks and eat your lunch because a lot of us forget to do that when we're at work. So insighttimer.com. If you have Kaiser, Calm is free for you. And so just go on to the Kaiser website, log in, and in the search bar, write Calm, CALM, and it's an app for your phone. It's free. Insight Timer is also free. You can pay for Insight Timer. I never have because I don't need to, because I get everything I need without paying for it. Calm is expensive for the amped up version. It's $58 a year, but with Kaiser, it's free. So I encourage you to download that. Also, you might want to check out our website that is on our website is Credible Minds. And it's just Credible Minds, and you can find that through the HSS website. And it has a lot of good videos, podcasts, articles about everything related to health. So that's a good resource, as well as Help Guide, HELPGUIDE.org. And helpguide.org is a website that was developed by and for lay people on issues of mental health and emotional health. And it's absolutely excellent. It's a really, really well done website. And last and definitely not least is the Greater Good Science Center. And that's part of UC Berkeley. And it's all about gratitude. And I know there's a lot of talk about gratitude, and sometimes people think it's over talked, but there is something to say for those moments when you are feeling down and then can think, well, wait a second, this is something I'm grateful for. And that can actually help you to feel better. There's a lot of research around that. So that's a lot of resources. It's 1 o'clock. I want to thank you for your time, everybody. And if you have any questions, please do feel free to reach out.